Well, we've been studying Psalm 46, and I think we're going to wrap it up today. We have seen in this psalm, the psalmist is kind of zooming out of his circumstances, and he's taking a kind of a cosmic view of who is God and what is going on. And he starts with this, and he ends with this phrase too. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. He bookends the psalm with that. Look at verse 11. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. So he ends with the idea. He starts with refuge. He ends with refuge. I love it. That basically we are encompassed. We're surrounded. Every waking thought, every waking moment and circumstance can be bookended with the idea that God is my refuge to start with, and God is my refuge to end with. What a great way to look at every day. I'm going to start this day by running to God as my refuge. I'm going to end this day by pillowing my head, resting in God as my refuge. And I love how the psalmist basically deals with natural and national or geopolitical events. And he talks about life on planet Earth being tumultuous and unpredictable. But in spite of that, God being at work, God promising a city that's protected and provided for, that is my final destination. I'm a citizen of that city if I've trusted Christ as my Savior, and that city is where God reigns. Until I'm there, I can rest that God is my refuge and my very present help, and I will choose not to fear. I'm just kind of paraphrasing all the ideas of the psalm as we go through it. No matter what happens in terms of cataclysmic events on planet Earth, naturally, waters and seas and storms and all of these overwhelming events. And then verse 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, he talks about wars and national events and geopolitical events. And he says, there are those on planet Earth that rage against God and defy God. But God is my refuge, and because because I've placed my faith in Him, I have a different relationship with Him altogether. I can come and behold His works. I can behold His judgment and not receive His judgment. I can see His unfolding justice without fearing that I'm the object of that justice. What a profound promise. We read yesterday, He makes wars to cease, verse 9. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. So God breaks all of our weapons, all of man's weapons against Him. But then all of my weapons, all of my defenses against the will of God, all of my arguments with God, just like spears and chariots, God can break them and break them down. And so we applied yesterday verses 8 and 9, personally, saying, am I willing to come and participate, engage with God in what He's doing? Am I willing to let Him break down the war of my soul against His will, against His doing in my life? And we applied that yesterday to this moment of this virus, this pandemic. And I asked myself this question in the morning: am I fully surrendered like Jesus was in Gethsemane? Not my will, but thine be done. I have a will. I want this to be over. I want to take my wife out to dinner. I want to gather as a church family, and that's my will. And there's nothing wrong with those things or wanting those things unless I am fighting God. And there is this surrender in this psalm that basically says, I am going to go totally on board with what God is doing, and I am going to rest in His will. I'm not going to resist. I'm going to rest. Resist versus rest. Am I resisting Him or am I resting in Him? And that's where verse 10 takes us today. And this is one of our favorite verses to quote. But I find it that I can quote it easier than I can practice it, okay? I say it much more often than I actually experience it, okay? So let's look at it personally, practically, and experientially. And look at this verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Man, what a great verse. What a powerful verse, okay? Let's just break it down in a few different ways. First of all, it's a command. God says, be still. I'm reminded of Jesus telling the storms, peace be still. And the wind and waves obeyed his voice. Do I obey his voice? Am I willing to be still? Now, I don't know what your work schedule is right now, but a large percentage of the American population and the global population right now is kind of in a forced stillness. Now, here's the thing. We can have a moment where our lives are slower, but that doesn't mean we're doing what verse 10 says. You know, I found even in the last few weeks, when my life schedule is radically different, I could still keep myself pretty active and pretty busy, and my mind bouncing from one thing to the next and consuming way too much news and you know, not actually being still, even though God has wiped out my calendar and basically said, here you go, you can be still now. It still takes a decision of the heart and mind to say, okay, I'm going to be still before God. I am going to open his word. I'm going to put some worshipful music into my heart and mind. I am going to let my mind and heart deliberately be still in God. So it is a command, okay? And that is something I should obey as a gift from God. I should trust him that his will is best for me and choose to be still. And I don't know about you, but for me, I am attracted to doing. I'm a compulsive worker. I love to work. I love to be active. I love to be productive. I don't think I've tied my identity to it. I think there were times in my life that I did and have in the past. I don't think it's about identity. I think it's that I love living, and doing makes me feel alive, right? I love accomplishing and doing what God has given me to do. And by the way, we're studying on Wednesday nights Titus, and all throughout the book of Titus, Paul instructs Titus to be a pattern of good works, okay? So we know that God calls us to some doing. He gave Adam work to do. Work is kind of intrinsic to our very existence. So there's nothing wrong with work. God says, hey, 6 days thou shalt do all thy labor. And that's the work that God gave man to do. But on the seventh day, he said rest. So it's not that it's either or, but it is that there's a balance. It's not that work is wrong or activity is wrong or even passionate, zealous works. God says in Titus, be zealous of good works. Be careful to maintain good works. So we're created, we're called to work and to do good works. But isn't there a balance? And isn't it wonderful that God says, listen, your best productivity and your best fruitfulness will come as you learn to expend, but then to be still and to restore and to contextualize or to frame all of your working and serving within the boundaries of being still. So be still. It's a command. It's a call that's a counter component to our call to work. And it's not either or, it's both. And it's working and expending, but then it's being still. And there are seasons. And this is what I love about following God. There are seasons. There are seasons where God calls us and presses us with new vision and new work to accomplish. But you know what? There's also seasons where God says, rest, catch your breath, look back on what I've done, dream forward, and let me restore your soul. Wait on the Lord, and he shall renew thy strength. Let me tell you another thought I wanted to visit out of verse 10, and that is simply the word be. Again, to parallel the thought of working versus being still, we're called human beings, not human doings. And again, so often we become defined by what we do. We tie our hearts and our identity to what we do or what we can do, our skills, our abilities, our achievements, our accomplishments, our checklists. We feel valid and meaningful and significant because we're getting stuff done, we're doing. And what God wants to protect us from in verses like this is from being defined by what we do. You know, the whole gospel is built on the idea that we're defined by who God says we are, based on the work of Jesus. So it's it's who Jesus is and what Jesus has done and who that makes me, so who I am. So God calls me to be before he engages me in doing. He wants all of my being to flow from all of my doing to flow from my being. And he wants me to rest in who he is and who he says I am. I am, like the song says, I am who you say I am. I'm not what I do. I am who you say I am. And before I can do, I need to be. I need to be with God. I need to become who God calls me and is shaping me to be. And all of my doing should flow from being. So God, as he wraps this psalm up, he has explored all of these natural events that can come undone. He's explored all of these geopolitical events of nations and raging and warring against one another. And then he said, watch what I'm about to do. I am God, and I can stop these wars in a moment. I can break all of all this weaponry. I can pile into a pile and melt it with the words of my mouth. The nations melt before me. I'm yours, so be still. Okay, be still. As opposed to, the word still, by the way, is a reference to ceasing from worry, from effort, to stop activity. It means to stop trying. It means to release my mind, my heart, my soul from needing to know, from needing to fix, from needing to produce, from needing to bear some kind of fruit or evidence of my effectiveness. It means to literally just stop and watch what God's going to do. And this is so often how he works. The harder we work, the more we take the credit. So God says, why don't you stop? And why don't you let me do the work I'm going to do? Relinquish control. Instead of grasping for control, relinquish control. And know that I am God. Okay, so in other words, just rest in stillness, in the truth, in the reality that I am in control. I have every moment of every day. You're in the palm of my hand. Be still and know. There's a lot we don't know right now, okay? There's so many questions we have and so many things we wish would resume or answers we could find. But God says, just know that I am God and be okay there. Be okay right there to be still and know that I am God. Watch how I'm going to provide for you. Watch how I'm going to direct you. Watch what I'm going to do through this. Watch my unfolding plan. Be amazed at what I'm about to unfold before you. Be still and know that I am God. And then I love this. This is what God is always doing. He says, I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. He brings good things out of bad things. And ultimately those good things is that more people trust him, more people see him, more people come into a relationship with him. He is exalting himself. He's using me and you to do that work as believers. We are here to exalt him. But God says, no matter how bad things look, no matter how your calculations and math work out, trust me, watch me, be still, rest, rely on me. I am God, and I am exalting myself. I will be exalted among these God-defying, rebellious, defiant people, but I will be exalted in the whole earth. And then look at verse 11, and we'll wrap it up for today. And this is where he lands, the Lord of hosts. What is the Lord of hosts? Remember, he's the captain of all the armies of heaven, okay? The Lord of hosts is with us, and the God of Jacob is our refuge. He's with us, we run to him, we find refuge in him. He's with you. He is your refuge today. So you have his permission, and I love this, to be still and know that he is God. Friend, I know, like everybody, how hard it is to get my brain and my heart to be still. It is incredibly difficult. And yet when I can listen to God. I can hear what he's teaching me. I can bless others. I can properly relate well to others with a still heart and a still mind, a soul that's free of anxiety, free of fear. This is where this verse calls us to. It's a wonderful place to be, and I hope you'll go there today, to be still and know that I am God. I love you. I'm praying for you. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you have a great Wednesday, and join us tonight at 7 o'clock as we live stream The Grace Life. We're studying the book of Titus. We'll see you there.